Has found the number of people applying to work in the social care sector has increased by nearly 40% since the pandemic. But the research from the Work Foundation has also found that, in contrast, those actually in the sector are looking for work in other industries. Mark Adams is the chief executive of the Widnes Community Integrated Care, a national social care charity which provides care and support for thousands of people across England and Scotland, and joins me now. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Paul.
So what do you make of this report, then? Have you seen an increase in people wanting to get into social care?
Yes, and I think at a high level, obviously this is to be welcomed, because I think in many ways working in social care has been one of the kind of best kept secrets that people have tended to regard it as being low paid and not particularly exciting as a career choice. But those that have tried it, and obviously many hundreds of thousands have found it incredibly rewarding in terms of making a real difference to people's lives. I think what we've just got to be careful of is that at the moment we're coming out of a period where the economy's been hit so incredibly hard in so many different ways. Youth unemployment's almost at an all-time high. And because vacancies in social care have been there right the way throughout the crisis, there are probably people that are trying social care because there's a lack of alternatives. And as the economy sort of bounces back, what will be interesting is to see how many people actually do choose to stay.
Do you think as a society and as human beings we've become more caring as a result of the pandemic, if you follow the point I'm trying to make?
I think certainly from what we've seen, that the level of humanity, the level of empathy and understanding has increased. Prior to COVID, we were all aware of care homes and domiciliary care visitors and, people that were in supported living, but it was almost sort of out of sight, out of mind. I think, when we've been locked down in our homes, waiting out the storm, it's been very apparent that apart from doctors and nurses, you've had this huge army, of almost 1.6 million social care workers effectively working on the front line, putting the interests of others ahead of their own. And I think that has stirred an emotion and a reaction. I think it's kind of beholden on the sector now to maintain that, really to kind of keep social care in the spotlight, because as you know, the big thing coming up now is what the government does with social care reform, and really trying to build more of a parity between social care and the NHS.
Just on the staffing situation, great that people want to get into the sector, but staff turnover in terms of people looking to work in other industries has got to be a concern, hasn't it?
Well, it is at the moment, wrongly, a sort of minimum wage industry where, you're looking at people earning about £8.91 an hour, or about £16,700 a year. And when you compare that to working in supermarkets on £10 an hour, or even more in places like Amazon, we've got our priorities the wrong way round. And I think that, we're expecting a white paper later this year. There's a lot of lobbying going on with government at the moment. And what we really want to see, I guess, is a sort of 5-year plan that says, if you're a care worker on the front line of the NHS earning over 20,000, why are you only earning 16,700 if you're actually not in the NHS doing exactly the same job? So I think it's a fundamental year for the future of social care. But, reports like this, which really show that people are open to the concept of working in social care, it's obviously to be applauded.
You mentioned there about, the disparity between the NHS and social care. How frustrating then when I think there was a big build-up, wasn't there, to the Queen's speech, and then there was, I think, 7 words in it about social care.
Yeah, I mean, to give them the credit for what they put in, it was actually 9 words.
I do apologise. 2 crucial words I missed there.
Absolutely, but I think given the level of expectation there was in the lead up to the Queen's speech, and the fact that the Prime Minister 2 years ago said they already had a plan for the recovery of social care ready to launch, you could obviously forgive the Prime Minister for the distraction that COVID created. But, to realise that actually there's still an awful lot of thinking that needs to go on, because the government is obviously not sure of what to do. There's talks about expanding, the local authority delivery of social care. There's talks about backing social care into the NHS. There's talks of running social care centrally from London. And obviously, one of the key stakeholders is the Chancellor, who, is probably looking at something like a 5 to 10 billion a year investment to try and balance social care anywhere near, where the NHS is. So I think for all of your listeners who hopefully are proud of what their social care colleagues have done over the last 18 months, the more pressure that can be brought on the government to say, please do the right thing.
And of course, and people will say, well, people don't get into that game for the money. But the fact of the matter is, you've illustrated that the wages aren't great. And if the wages are higher, I assume that would attract a different type of candidate, wouldn't it? It'd attract more qualified people as well.
It would, and what we really want is for people to be saying, look, here is a career where I can go in and I can go as far, as I want to in terms of, moving into management roles and leadership roles, in a sector that isn't as fragmented. I mean, at the moment, there's over 20,000 separate organisations delivering social care, and I think that's the sector needs to consolidate. And people that do try it, who are caring by nature, who are perhaps a little bit more extrovert by nature, really get an incredible amount out of it. And the only thing that really distracts from that is that, they look at colleagues getting, discounted groceries, working for, Sainsbury's, Lidl or Morrison's, on a couple of pounds an hour more. And then sometimes it's just tempting to say, well, it might not be quite as fun or as rewarding, but I'm going to put my family first and go for the salary. Social care really shouldn't be like that. It should be recognising the skills that people have got. And we're really, really hopeful that reports like this, the momentum that we've built through COVID, leads to lasting reform later in the year.
Why is it? I mean, this is obviously historical. Why has it always been like that? Why has it just been taken for granted, do you think, or just not viewed as such a worthwhile skill as, say, being a nurse or working in the NHS? What's the reason?
I think it is the fragmentation, because you haven't had the ability to lobby or influence. In a lot of organisations, you've got a strong representation by trade unions. The fragmented nature of social care means that, whilst there's lots of people that work in the sector that are members of a trade union, not that many organisations, recognise them and work with them to lobby the kind of politicians locally and centrally. And I think that, again, we all can relate to the NHS because it's ever present in our lives, whether we're visiting a GP or occasionally going into hospital. But really, it tends to be at a crisis point in your life where you might touch social care. And so for a lot of the population, it's not been something they've fully understood. And I think COVID has really helped to show that, okay, there's 1.4 million people working in the NHS, but there's 1.6 million working in social care, doing an equally important job. It's anything but low skilled. It's incredibly complex these days. There's over 70 different aspects of learning that you need to go into in all of the type of competencies that you need. But it is something that just hasn't had the same platform that other careers have, or maybe it's not as visible. But maybe that's changing, and all we can really hope for is that, one of the silver linings coming out of COVID is that it leads to the reform of a sector that is so important for us.
Mark, I'm grateful for you coming on this morning. Thank you.
Cheers, Paul.
Mark Adams there, Chief Executive of Widnes Community Integrated Care.